Imagine this. You survive a catastrophe that just, wipes out everyone you know.
Oh, an absolute nightmare scenario.
Right. You escape in a lifeboat, drift into the freezing black vacuum of deep space, and you sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, you sleep for 57 years, and when you finally open your eyes, the people who pull you from the wreckage, well, they don't see a miracle.
No, not at all. They just see a delay in their salvage schedule.
Exactly. And when you finally make it back to civilization, the authorities don't treat you like a survivor, they treat you like a liability.
Yeah, a massive financial
They
liability.
tell you the monster that slaughtered your friends is just a hallucination. And the punchline: while you were sleeping, the very corporation that ignored your warnings went ahead and built a multi-billion-dollar real estate venture right on top of the monster's nest.
It is honestly the ultimate distillation of institutional betrayal. I mean, you look at the structures built to protect humanity, government oversight, corporate safety protocols, military superiority, and you realize something terrifying. That when faced with an actual existential unknown, those systems will not just fail. They will actively throw you to the wolves to balance their spreadsheets.
Man, that is grim. But welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are so thrilled you could join us today because we are tearing into the novelization of Aliens by Alan Dean Foster.
Such an incredible adaptation.
It really is. Now, our mission today isn't just to recap a legendary sci-fi survival story. We are unpacking this incredibly dense source material to see how Foster expands the universe.
Right, he takes a simple monster story and turns it into a surgical dissection of corporate bureaucracy.
Yeah, and the physical mechanisms of terraforming, the pathology of trauma, and of course the lethal hubris of the military-industrial complex.
To set the baseline for you, the listener, we are looking at the timeline of Warrant Officer Ellen Ripley.
The sole survivor.
Exactly, the sole survivor of the commercial towing vehicle Nostromo. After 57 years adrift in hypersleep, she is rescued, only to face a corporate board that strips her of her rank and totally dismisses her desperate warnings about a lethal, parasitic alien species.
And we are tracing her terrifying, really reluctant return to the world where it all started.
A planet now covered by oblivious human colonists.
Right, and defended by a squad of heavily armed, wildly overconfident Colonial Marines. Okay, let's unpack this, starting in the dark.
The cold vacuum of space.
Exactly. Where Ripley's lifeboat, the Narcissus, is just drifting, the text introduces a deep salvage team that stumbles across her beacon.
And this part is so telling.
Right. The immediate mechanical focus of these salvagers, they don't approach the pod with awe.
Not at all.
They run a laser cutter through the hull, key her into the hypersleep capsule, and the very first thing they register isn't a human tragedy, it's a blip on a scanner.
A biological blip.
Yeah. They actually spot her cat, Jones, moving under her arm, and for a split second, the crew thinks they found an exotic, valuable alien life form.
They are looking for a payday.
Exactly, a quick buck.
Which perfectly foreshadows the entire ethos of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Before she even opens her eyes, Ripley's existence is being quantified into credits and debits.
Just numbers on a screen.
Right. But let's look at the mechanism of hypersleep itself, because Foster's text really dwells on the physiological and psychological paradox it creates.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So, hypersleep essentially halts cellular degradation. You are put into a state of extreme metabolic stasis,
Yeah.
but the brain isn't entirely deadened.
She's dreaming. Right.
Yes, Ripley has been dreaming for nearly 6 decades. Her subconscious has been trapped in a loop with the xenomorph.
Oh man, 60 years of nightmare.
Exactly. So she wakes up physically unaged, but psychologically she has endured half a century of unbroken, simmering trauma.
And the reality she wakes up to on Gateway Station is arguably worse than the nightmares.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
I mean, the medical technology is utopian. She recovers in a room with virtual reality rainforests and precision robotics.
But the psychological care.
Non-existent. Completely non-existent. Carter Burke, a corporate representative, sits down and casually drops an absolute anvil on her life.
Just a devastating blow.
He tells her she has been adrift for 57 years. And what really twists the knife is the fate of her daughter, Amanda.
Oh, this part is heartbreaking.
Ripley promised to be home for her 11th birthday. Instead, Amanda grew up, lived a completely ordinary life, married, and died of cancer at age 66.
The temporal dislocation there is just staggering. From Ripley's subjective experience, she saw her young daughter mere weeks ago.
Right.
From a biological standpoint, she has somehow outlived her own child simply by existing in a frozen tube.
It's mind-bending.
The psychological literature on complex trauma talks about the necessity of a grounding reality for recovery.
Like a safe space or a support system?
Exactly. Ripley is entirely denied that. Her grounding reality, her family, her era, her context has literally turned to dust.
Which leads us directly to the Board of Inquiry. Weyland-Yutani doesn't give her time to grieve.
No time at all.
They drag her in front of a panel from the Interstellar Commerce Commission, the Extrasolar Colonization Administration, and various insurance executives.
Just a room full of suits.
And this scene is infuriating. They sit there in their gray suits, looking at sanitized screens. Ripley is trying to explain the sheer biological terror of the alien.
The eggs, the face hugger, all of it.
Yeah, the acid blood. And they do not care. They are entirely fixated on the fact that she detonated the Nostromo, which was a $42 million payload.
We really need to analyze the specific bureaucratic mechanism at play here. It is not simply that these executives are cartoonishly evil.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, it is a systemic failure of risk management. The ECA representative states they have surveyed over 300 worlds and encountered 0 indigenous life forms more complex than a microbe.
So it's completely unprecedented for them.
Right. Their actuarial tables, their entire economic model of galactic expansion is predicated on an empty universe.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Ripley's testimony introduces a variable so disruptive, so catastrophic to their financial forecasts that their institutional immune system kicks in.
Ah, they reject the host.
Exactly. They have to categorize her as a psychiatric anomaly to preserve their paradigm.
Wait, I have to challenge that interpretation. Is it really just an unconscious institutional immune system protecting an economic model? Because the text makes it clear they have active terraforming operations on LV-426.
What's fascinating here is how the company literally rebranded the planet.
Exactly. They renamed it Acheron to make it sound like a frontier destination. They aren't just ignoring her out of systemic inertia.
You think it's more active?
I think they are actively suppressing her. Because acknowledging the alien would mean shutting down a multi-billion-dollar atmospheric processing plant. It is willful, malicious negligence. Think about it like this. It's like waking up from a coma to find out your house has been foreclosed on, your family is gone, and the bank is telling you the burglar who ruined your life was just a figment of your imagination.
That's a strong analogy.
And why do they tell you that? Because acknowledging the burgle would hurt the bank's bottom line.
That is a fair distinction.
Yeah.
But look at the administrator, Van Leeuwen. He embodies the banality of evil.
Oh, he's so smug.
He doesn't sneer at her like a comic book villain. He just patronizes her.
Yeah.
He speaks with bureaucratic exhaustion.
Just sighing at her.
Right. He legally revokes her commercial flight license and mandates psychometric probation. By legally designing her as a head case, the company entirely neutralizes the threat she poses to their Acheron investment.
It's a neat little bow for them.
Exactly. They don't have to send a military team to investigate a planet if the only witness is legally classified as insane.
Her reaction to this is so visceral, though. She looks at these blank-faced executives and asks, "Do you have earwax or what?"
I love that line.
It's so good. She warns them explicitly that if a single one of those organisms gets back to the network, human civilization is over. You can just kiss it goodbye.
But they silence her.
Yeah, they do. And while these executives sit in their climate-controlled orbiting boardroom covering their liabilities, the horrific reality of their paperwork is playing out millions of miles away.
Down on the windy surface of Acheron.
Exactly.
The novel provides a stunning, deeply mechanical look at Hadley's Hope, the colony on Acheron.
Yeah, let's talk about the colonies.
It is not a sleek, futuristic utopia. It is a gritty, wind-scoured, industrial nightmare. The core of the colony is the atmosphere processor.
Which is huge. Right.
Massive. It's a fusion-powered engine designed to scrub a methane-choked rock and slowly, over decades, introduce breathable gases.
And the people living there.
The 159 colonists who live there are roughnecks. They're engineers, wildcatters, people who possess a romanticized pioneer spirit.
But the environment itself is so hostile. Foster describes a phenomenon the colonists call particulate osmosis.
Oh, this is a great detail.
And I want to dig into how this actually works, because it's not just dust. Acheron is covered in microscopic volcanic silicates.
Basically ground-up glass.
Exactly. Because the winds whip at 300 kilometers per hour, this micro-abrasive dust literally grinds its way through molecular seals.
It's unstoppable.
No matter how tightly you lock an airlock, the grit gets inside the living quarters. It gets into the food, the water, their lungs.
The thematic weight of particulate osmosis is brilliant. It serves as a physical precursor to the xenomorph invasion.
How though?
Well, the colonists believe they have mastered their environment with their pressure doors and fusion reactors. But the dust proves that their boundaries are porous.
Oh, I see.
If they cannot keep microscopic volcanic glass from invading their safe spaces, they have absolutely no chance against a highly evolved, predatory biological organism.
That makes total sense.
The environment is already breaching their defenses before the first egg even opens.
And the inciting incident that unleashes that biological organism is framed with such tragic irony.
It really is.
Simpson and Leidecker, the colony's operations managers, receive a grid reference from Earth. We later learn Carter Burke sent it.
Right from his cushy office.
Yeah. They send an independent wildcatter named Russ Jordan, his wife Anne, and their 2 kids, Newt and Tim, out in a battered, heavy-duty tractor to investigate the coordinates.
You have to look at the socioeconomics of this moment.
Okay, let's hear it.
Why would a family risk their lives driving across a deadly storm-ravaged landscape?
For the money.
Exactly, because Weyland-Yutani incentivizes it. The colonists operate on a claim system. If you find something valuable, mineral deposits, salvage, you get a percentage.
So they think they're hitting the jackpot.
Russ Jordan thinks he's driving toward early retirement. The company leverages the greed and desperation of its blue-collar workers to do its reconnaissance work for free.
Isn't it incredible how corporate curiosity becomes a death sentence for a family out on a Sunday drive?
It's devastating.
I mean, it's like a family in a minivan being directed by their GPS into an active minefield just because a corporate executive wanted to see what was there.
That is exactly what happens.
They crest a ridge, and there it is, the derelict alien spacecraft. The way Foster describes the ship is deeply unsettling.
The aesthetic is so wrong for human eyes.
It doesn't have right angles. It has a vitreous luster, a slick bulge that looks grown rather than manufactured. It is a biomechanical monstrosity resting on the dead rock.
Utterly alien.
And while the parents put on their pressure suits to go inside, little Newt and her brother Tim are left alone, playing in the tight, claustrophobic air ducts of the tractor.
The detail about the air ducts is essential. Newt proudly declares she is the undisputed champion of the monster maze game because her small size allows her to navigate spaces the adults cannot.
Just kids playing a game.
Right. In the context of sibling rivalry, it's a minor detail. But in the context of survival psychology, it is the exact adaptive trait that will keep her alive when the rest of the colony is annihilated.
That is such amazing foreshadowing. Inside the ship, Russ Jordan finds the egg silo. And this brings us to the facehugger.
Stuff of nightmares.
We need to explain the mechanics of this creature because it's not just a monster. It's a perfectly engineered biological delivery system.
Absolutely.
When Anne drags Russ back to the tractor, he has this thing wrapped around his neck. It is flat, heavily ribbed, with spider-like legs gripping his head and a muscular tail coiled tightly around his throat to prevent removal.
It operates much like real-world parasitoid wasps, but on a terrifying scale. The facehugger isn't the primary organism.
It's just a phase.
It's essentially a mobile placenta. Its only function is to bypass the host's defenses, establish a temporary symbiotic life support connection, feeding the host oxygen while suppressing their nervous system, and implant an embryo directly into the chest cavity.
Which is just awful to think about.
The biological efficiency is staggering.
Yeah.
And what protects this process?
Pressurized molecular acid for blood.
Exactly.
That acid blood is the ultimate defense mechanism. If you try to cut the creature off the host, the acid bleeds out, instantly melting through whatever tool you were using, and inevitably melting through the host's face.
It's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah. The organism uses the host's own instinct for self-preservation against them. So Russ is infected, Newt screams in the tractor, and that scream effectively marks the end of Hadley's hope. All communications with Acheron just drop dead.
That sudden, deafening silence across the communication relays is what forces Weyland-Yutani to pivot their strategy.
Time for a new plan.
And this brings the company back to Ellen Ripley. She has hit absolute rock bottom. She is living in a tiny, sterile apartment on Gateway Station, working menial labor on the cargo docks, operating power loaders.
She's trying to scrape by.
And she is plagued by horrific, debilitating night sweats.
Carter Burke and a military officer, Lieutenant Gorman, show up at her apartment, and the manipulation here is astounding.
Oh, Burke plays her perfectly.
Burke tells her that contact with the colony is lost. He offers her a deal. If she goes back as a civilian advisor on a military rescue mission, the company will reinstate her flight license and wipe her psychiatric record clean.
But look at Ripley's reaction.
Mm.
Initially, she flatly refuses. The clinical reality of complex PTSD is that the brain is hardwired to avoid the trauma trigger at all costs.
She wants nothing to do with it.
She is terrified. But Foster explores the psychology of her nightmares. She has a visceral, violent dream of an alien bursting from her own chest.
Wow.
The realization sets in that the trauma is already inside her. Avoiding the physical location won't cure her. She intuitively understands a brutal form of exposure therapy.
She has to face it.
She has to go back and face the trigger to reclaim her mind.
But she lays down a non-negotiable condition. She tells Burke she is only going if the military's objective is to wipe the organisms out completely.
No studying.
No capturing. Burke readily agrees, stating that company policy is to destroy any hostile lethal organisms.
Which is a complete lie.
Oh, lying through his teeth, but Ripley accepts the premise. This represents a massive shift in her character arc. She transitions from a passive victim suffering in the dark to an active participant taking control of her fate.
Which brings us to the military apparatus. She boards the military transport, the Sulaco, and is introduced to the Colonial Marines.
The ultimate tough guys.
To understand why this mission fails so spectacularly, we have to analyze the sociological makeup of this unit. Master Sergeant Apone, Corporal Hicks, Privates Vasquez, Hudson, Drake, Frost, Dietrich.
They're a tight crew.
They are described as a single fighting organism with 11 heads. They are a highly integrated, lethally trained machine.
So what does this all mean? Because I have a real problem with the way these Marines are portrayed early on.
They rub you the wrong way.
The overconfidence is frankly staggering. Gorman, the commanding officer, calls it a rescue mission, but the grunts are joking around calling it a bug hunt.
Yeah, they don't take it seriously.
Hudson is strutting around the armory, bragging about his independently targeting particle beam phalanx gun. Vasquez is doing pull-ups, treating her massive heavy weapon like an extension of her own body. They mock Ripley's warnings. They act like they're invincible. I mean, it's like a championship football team stepping onto the field, completely oblivious to the fact that the opposing team is playing with live grenades instead of a football.
I think we need to look at why they act that way. Is it just blind hubris? Or is it a necessary psychological armor?
What do you mean?
These Marines are deployed to the harshest environments in the galaxy. They face extreme temperatures, hostile atmospheres, and brutal combat scenarios on a regular basis.
So they have to be tough.
If they genuinely internalize the infinite, terrifying variables of deep space, they would be paralyzed by fear. Their bravado, their absolute faith in their superior technology is the coping mechanism that allows them to step out of the dropship.
Okay, that's a fascinating way to look at it. The hubris isn't just arrogance, it's a survival tool. But in this specific case, that tool is completely maladapted to the threat. Let's talk about the tech they place so much faith in.
The hardware.
The M41A pulse rifle. It uses caseless ammunition 10mm explosive-tipped rounds. Because it's caseless, the magazine holds a massive amount of ammo, and it fires at an incredible rate without jamming.
A lot of firepower.
And the M56 smart gun that Vasquez and Drake use is even more advanced. It's mounted on an articulated harness and uses infrared tracking to automatically target moving objects.
Exactly. Their entire tactical doctrine is built around the premise that anything they encounter can be overwhelmed by a sheer volume of high-velocity, armor-piercing kinetic energy.
Just shoot it until it stops moving.
They view the universe strictly through the lens of ballistics. When Ripley tries to explain the alien's life cycle, the stealth, the biomechanical adaptation, the acid blood, they just make crude jokes.
They don't get it at all.
They literally cannot conceptualize an enemy that cannot be solved with a trigger pull.
And the reliance on technology brings up another major trauma trigger for Ripley on the Sulaco.
Bishop.
The synthetic, Bishop. During a meal in the mess hall, Bishop attempts a knife trick and inadvertently reveals white fluid synthetic blood.
And Ripley just snaps.
She completely loses it. She slaps a food tray out of his hands and violently backs away, screaming at him to stay away from her.
This is a crucial moment for understanding Ripley's psychology. On her previous voyage, the synthetic officer Ash violently malfunctioned.
Oh, right.
And attempted to kill her in order to protect the alien specimen for the company. The betrayal was absolute.
And Bishop tries to explain, doesn't he?
Bishop attempts to logic his way out of her anger. He explains that his newer Hyperdyne Systems model features behavioral inhibitors, making it physically impossible for him to harm or by omission allow a human being to be harmed.
But logic doesn't override trauma.
Never.
To Ripley, the fact that Bishop is programmed to be harmless is completely irrelevant. What's deeply ironic is that Ripley, at this point, inherently trusts the cocky, violently unpredictable human Marines more than she trusts a machine engineered specifically for safety.
Humans are flawed, but predictable in their flaws.
Exactly. Her lived experience supersedes his programming specs.
This tension between human imperfection and technological precision sets the stage as they prepare for the planetary drop. They board the dropship, detach from the Sulaco, and plunge through Acheron's violently turbulent atmosphere.
The descent is brutal.
Rough ride.
The dropship is shaking violently, diving through thick, dark clouds of atmospheric disturbance. They touch down near Hadley's Hope and deploy the armored personnel carrier, the APC.
The tank.
Now, this vehicle is essentially a massive, sloped armor tank on huge independent wheels. They drive it right up to the main complex, expecting resistance, or at least a greeting.
But they get nothing.
What they find is completely chilling.
The colony is a ghost town. They deploy out of the APC, sweeping the corridors with their motion trackers. And the environmental storytelling here is a masterclass in forensics.
It paints such a picture.
The text describes barricades constructed from welded pipes and overturned heavy machinery. But the barricades haven't just been breached, they've been melted.
Oh, man.
There are gaping holes in the metal flooring that look like they've been eaten away by highly concentrated acid.
The physical environment tells a story of a society that slowly realized its tools were useless. They find the colony's medical bay, and it's a scene of utter desperation.
Total panic.
Inside, they discover stasis tubes containing the remains of facehuggers. 2 of them are actually still alive, pulsing against the glass. But it's the medical logs from a Dr. Ling that reveal the true horror of the situation.
Let's break down what those logs describe, because it illustrates the fundamental failure of human technology against the alien biology.
What does she try to do?
The colonists found a man with a facehugger attached. Standard medical procedure, remove the parasite. Dr. Ling attempted to cut the creature's gripping tail with a laser scalpel.
Seems logical.
But the moment the laser breached the creature's skin, the pressurized molecular acid sprayed out. It didn't just burn, it violently reacted with the oxygen and the surgical tools, dissolving the laser scalpel, burning through the surgical table, and ultimately killing the host during the procedure.
It's horrifying. They tried to apply human medical science to an organism that uses chemistry as a weapon.
And it backfired spectacularly.
The colonists realized that whether you use a surgical laser or an industrial cutter, fighting the parasite directly only accelerates your own death. And while the Marines are trying to process the implications of this acid blood, Hicks's motion tracker picks up a faint, erratic signal.
The squad tightens up. They move into the ruined colony kitchen, weapons raised, expecting a xenomorph.
Tension is high.
Hicks reaches under a piece of overturned metal grating, and instead of a monster, he pulls out a feral, terrified little girl.
Rebecca Jordan, Newt. She is covered in grime, her clothes are rags, and she is clutching a disembodied plastic doll head named Casey.
Just a deeply sad image.
She doesn't speak. She immediately bites Hicks on the hand and scurries deep into the ventilation ductwork like a cornered animal. Ripley actually has to crawl into the tight, claustrophobic vents after her, corner her in a dead end, and physically wrestle her into submission.
She fights so hard.
Newt fights with feral intensity, but what is so striking is that she does it in absolute silence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that silence is everything. If we look at the psychology of child survival in extreme trauma, children often adapt faster than adults because their ego structures are less rigid.
They haven't unlearned their instincts yet.
Precisely. The adult colonists tried to impose their will on the environment. They built barricades, they fired weapons, they made noise. Newt understood instantly that she was no longer the apex predator.
So she knew she was prey.
She adapted to the reality of being prey. She survived by finding spaces too small for the xenomorphs and by never ever making a sound.
I want to pause on this contrast between Newt and the adults. Why is it that this tiny child survived when a colony of tough, resourceful engineers couldn't?
It's a great question.
It reminds me of evolutionary biology. When the meteor hit the Earth, the massive, heavily armored dinosaurs tried to weather the storm with their sheer physical dominance, and they were entirely wiped out.
Yeah.
The tiny, fragile mammals survived because they hid in the cracks of the Earth and waited it out. Newt is the mammal in this scenario. The Marines, with all their heavy armor and loud weapons, are the dinosaurs.
A perfect biological analogy. When they finally extract Newt, the military command structure attempts to interrogate her. Lieutenant Gorman demands she provide a tactical sit rep on the enemy.
He talks to a traumatized child like a soldier.
He speaks to her as if she is a grunt, Newt completely dissociates. She looks right through him. She knows instinctively that his authority, his rank, and his questions are entirely meaningless in the face of the hive.
It takes Ripley to break through. Ripley cleans her face, gives her a cup of hot chocolate, and speaks to her not as an asset, but as a traumatized human being.
She shows some empathy.
And Newt finally speaks. She looks at Ripley, holds up her broken plastic doll, and delivers the most chilling line. She says, "I don't want you for a friend, because you'll be gone soon."
It is a staggering statement of existential defeat. Newt isn't being dramatic. She is stating what she believes is an empirical fact.
Just calling it like she sees it.
She has watched hundreds of tough, capable adults get slaughtered. To her mind, these new soldiers are already dead. They just haven't stopped walking yet.
But the military machinery doesn't pause for existential dread. While Ripley is connecting with Newt, Hudson is at a computer terminal, hacking into the colony's mainframe.
He's actually doing his job for once.
Yeah, he taps into the telemetry of the colonists' personal data transmitters, PDTs, which are surgically implanted trackers, and he finds them. All the remaining colonists are clustered in one location.
Sublevel C.
Exactly, sublevel C of the atmosphere processor.
This discovery fundamentally changes the tactical situation. The Marines now have a localized target, but the location itself is a trap.
Deep underground.
Sublevel C is directly beneath the massive fusion reactors that power the terraforming equipment. They leave Ripley and Newt secured in the heavily armored APC outside and proceed on foot into the subterranean industrial complex.
And as they descend into the processor, the environment undergoes a radical, horrifying transformation.
It stops looking like a human facility.
They are walking through standard Weyland-Yutani industrial corridors, steel plating, warning lights, steam pipes. But slowly, the walls begin to change.
The human architecture is literally being consumed. Foster described a translucent, epoxy-like resin spreading across the bulkheads.
Gross.
It is thick, organic, and wet. It looks grown rather than constructed. This is the xenomorph hive. We can look at this through the lens of eusocial insect behavior like termites or wasps, but applied to a biomechanical nightmare.
So they are building a nest.
The aliens aren't just killing people. They are actively secreting a bioresin to modify the colony's environment, transforming cold steel into a humid, fleshy incubator. Nature is violently reclaiming human technology.
Back in the APC, Ripley is watching the Marines progress through their helmet camera video feeds. Gorman and Burke are sitting beside her, treating it like a spectator sport.
Just watching the monitors.
But Ripley looks closely at the architectural schematics overlaid on the monitors. She realizes something that makes the blood drain from her face.
The heat exchangers.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Marines are walking directly underneath the primary heat exchangers for the fusion reactor.
Let's explain the physics of this situation. A fusion reactor relies on magnetic containment fields to manage unimaginable heat and plasma. The heat exchangers are the delicate vascular system keeping that reactor from melting down.
And they're standing right under it.
Ripley realizes that the Marines are carrying M41A pulse rifles loaded with 10mm armor-piercing explosive rounds. If they open fire inside that specific chamber, a stray bullet won't just break a pipe, it will rupture the cooling system.
Which would trigger a thermonuclear explosion. It is the ultimate tragic irony of human ingenuity.
How so?
It's like wearing a suit of armor in a fight, only you realize the armor is rigged with explosives. The very power source that Weyland-Yutani built to sustain human life on a dead world is now acting as an impenetrable shield for the alien nest. The very thing protecting you is what will kill you if you defend yourself.
That's a great way to put it.
Ripley violently shakes Gorman and screams at him to pull the squad out.
This is where Gorman's leadership completely fractures. He is an officer trained in simulations. On paper, his tactical knowledge is flawless. But faced with a dynamic, physical reality that contradicts his manual, he panics.
He freezes up.
He doesn't pull his squad out. Instead, he issues a disastrous order over the comms. He tells Sergeant Apone to confiscate the pulse rifle magazines. He restricts the squad to using only incinerators flamethrowers.
You know, I actually want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
From a purely logical standpoint, wasn't Gorman right? If firing a rifle causes a nuclear explosion that kills everyone within a 30-mile radius, pulling the ammo is the only mathematically sound decision to preserve the colony and the rescue team.
Logic divorced from situational awareness is fatal on a battlefield. Yes, preventing a nuclear detonation is paramount. But Gorman strips his soldiers of their primary defensive capability while leaving them deep inside an unknown hostile environment.
He leaves them stranded.
A competent commander would have ordered an immediate tactical retreat to reassess the engagement zone. By forcing them to proceed unarmed, he converts a highly lethal military unit into helpless bait.
And the grunts know it. Acheron dutifully goes around collecting the magazines, which completely demoralizes the squad. However, Vasquez and Drake, the heavy gunners, secretly keep their smart-on batteries plugged in.
They know better.
They trust their gut instincts over an officer sitting miles away in a safe, armored truck. Hicks, quietly anticipating disaster, pulls out a vintage, sawed-off, pump-action shotgun from a scabbard on his back.
So they push deeper into the hive, practically defenseless. The heat is oppressive. The air is thick with steam and organic musk. And then they find the colonists.
But not alive and well.
No, they aren't huddled in a safe room. They are entombed. The listening people have been cocooned into the resinous walls of the hive. Their bodies are physically cemented into the alien architecture.
It is a macabre, horrifying sight. The heat, the steam. Many of the bodies have their rib cages exploded outward, the aftermath of a chest-burst or birth.
Just brutal.
But Dietrich, the squad's medic, detects faint life signs from one of the cocoons. She approaches a woman whose skin is deathly pale, stretched tight over the alien resin. The woman's eyes flutter open, and she looks at Dietrich, weakly begging, "Please kill me."
Before the Marines can even process the cruelty of that request, the woman begins to convulse violently. A fresh chestburster erupts from her sternum, showering the area in blood.
It's pure nightmare fuel.
Instinctively, Apone levels his flamethrower and torches both the alien parasite and the suffering woman. The burst of intense heat and the agonized screams act as a massive sensory trigger. The hive awakens.
What happens next is a masterclass in chaotic terror. The Marines are looking around, their motion trackers screaming that they are surrounded by movement, but they can't see anything.
They are perfectly camouflaged.
That's the genius of the alien design. Their biomechanical exoskeletons blend perfectly with the ridged biomechanical resin they secrete. The walls literally detach themselves.
The ambush is total and devastating. An alien drops silently from the ceiling and grabs Dietrich. She panics and reflexively fires her flamethrower wildly as she is pulled up into the darkness.
Oh, and she hits Frost.
The stream of liquid fire hits Private Frost point blank. Frost becomes a human torch, screaming in agony, and accidentally stumbles backward, falling down a deep central shaft, taking the bag of confiscated ammunition with him.
In a matter of seconds, the squad's entire tactical cohesion evaporates. The heavy ammo is gone, the medic is taken, Frost is dead, whereas Bowski and Crow are struck down in the confusion.
It's an absolute massacre.
Sergeant Apone is screaming orders, trying to establish a firing line, but an alien reaches out from the resin wall and violently yanks him into the shadows. The leadership on the ground is gone.
And the leadership in the APC is utterly failing. We need to look at Gorman's psychological collapse in this moment. He is staring at the vital sign monitors in the APC, watching the green lines of his soldiers turn to flat red lines, one after another.
Just watching them die.
The auditory feed is just screaming and static. He begins to hyperventilate. His mind, conditioned by predictable military simulations, simply cannot compute the sheer chaotic speed of the slaughter.
He can't handle the variables.
He issues garbled, conflicting orders that the surviving Marines can't even hear over the noise. He is experiencing profound cognitive overload.
Meanwhile, down in the hive, Vasquez and Drake make a unilateral decision to survive. They ignore Gorman's standing order and open up with their heavy smart guns.
They risk the explosion.
They risk the thermonuclear explosion because the immediate alternative is being torn apart. The cavern is lit up by the stroke effect of heavy gunfire, muzzle flashes cutting through the thick steam, acid blood spraying across the walls. The military apparatus has completely broken down into primal survival.
Which forces a radical shift in the power dynamic. With the formal chain of command paralyzed, informal leadership must emerge to fill the vacuum. This transitions us perfectly to the actions taken by Ripley in the APC.
Ripley is watching the feeds. She sees Gorman completely frozen, his eyes wide and unblinking. She screams at him, demanding he drive the APC in to extract the survivors.
And he does nothing.
He just stammers. So Ripley makes a decision that defines her character. She physically shoves the commissioned military officer out of his command chair, drops into the driver's seat of this massive multi-ton armored personnel carrier, and slams the heavy transmission into gear.
It is the climax of her psychological resurrection. She sheds the identity of the traumatized survivor, the victor haunted by nightmares, and she weaponizes her trauma.
She fights back.
She transforms into the ultimate protector. She doesn't understand the complex military controls of the APC, but she understands momentum. She grinds the gears, crushes through the external doors of the processing station, and drives this massive machine recklessly down the spiraling ramps directly into the subterranean hive.
It is an incredibly visceral, violent descent. She is using a multi-million-dollar piece of military hardware, not as a tactical transport, but as a blunt force battering ram.
So smashing through everything.
She smashes through the alien resin structures. An alien leaps in front of the vehicle, and she doesn't swerve. She flattens it under the massive armored tires. Acid blood sprays up into the wheel wells. Metal is screeching against the wall. Sparks are showering the cabin. It's sheer kinetic fury.
She slams the brakes near the survivors. Hicks, Hudson, and Vasquez scramble toward the open armored door. But Drake isn't so lucky.
No, poor Drake.
As he provides covering fire, an alien takes a hit from a pulse rifle, and its pressurized acid blood splashes directly across Drake's chest and face. He falls, instantly incapacitated by the chemical burn.
They drag Vasquez into the cabin, but the nightmare isn't over. As the heavy steel door of the APC slides shut, an alien lunges and forces its rigid biomechanical head through the gap. The door grinds against its skull.
Try to get inside.
The creature's inner jaw shoots out, striking the paralyzed Gorman, injecting him with a paralyzing sting. Hicks shoves his vintage shotgun directly into the creature's mouth and pulls the trigger, blowing its head apart. Acid sprays everywhere, melting the door mechanisms, but they manage to seal it, and Ripley violently reverses the vehicle out of the complex.
They escape the immediate perimeter of the processor, but the APC is critically damaged. The acid has melted through the transaxles. They grind to a halt on the barren, rocky surface of Acheron, miles from the landing pad.
Stranded.
The squad is decimated, the vehicle is dead. And here, sitting in the mud and the freezing wind, a fierce philosophical boardroom debate erupts about their next move.
Ripley is uncompromising. She has seen the hive. She knows that no amount of infantry tactics will clear it. She lays out the only rational option left. I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
This raises an important question about corporate morality, because Carter Burke, the Weyland-Yutani representative, reveals the true depth of his sociopathy right here. He vehemently objects to the nuclear option.
Of course he does.
And we must analyze his argument carefully, because it is the voice of unchecked corporate greed. He argues that the atmosphere processor represents a multi-million credit investment. He pivots to the aliens themselves, framing them not as an existential threat to humanity, but as an unprecedented biological asset.
A weapon.
He talks about the scientific breakthroughs, the potential patents for bioweapons divisions.
I have to interject here. Because Burke's logic is so deeply, profoundly twisted, it almost defies belief. He just watched Marines get torn in half. He watched a woman give birth to a monster.
And he's thinking about money.
His brain is still calculating profit margins?
Yeah.
How does a human being watch people get melted by acid and still think about stock options? I mean, it is like a real estate agent trying to sell a house while it is actively burning down, praising the warmth of the living room. He completely divorces the reality of human suffering from the ledger of corporate gain.
He really does. And he attempts to manipulate Ripley by appealing to the very system that betrayed her. He suggests that if they bring a specimen back, she could be wealthy from the royalty rights.
He fundamentally misunderstands her.
He believes everyone has a price because he has a price. He is, in many ways, colder and more calculating than the xenomorphs. The aliens act on pure biological instinct. They are reproducing and expanding their hive as nature dictates. Burke is making a conscious, intellectual choice to sacrifice human lives for stock options.
Fortunately for humanity, Burke does not hold the tactical authority. With Gorman incapacitated and Apone dead, the military chain of command officially falls to Corporal Hicks.
The reluctant leader.
Burke tries to dismiss him, calling him just a grunt. But Hicks represents the pragmatic, traditional soldier. He doesn't care about Weyland-Yutani's stock price, and he isn't paralyzed by simulation theory like Gorman. He looks at the terrifying reality around him, listens to Ripley's experience, and makes the call. He looks right at Burke and says, "We'll take off and nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure."
Hicks overrides the corporate mandate in favor of basic human survival. It is a vital moment of clarity. They form a plan. They will radio the dropship, which is stationed miles away at the landing pad, have it pick them up, return to the Silico in orbit, and unleash a nuclear strike.
They get on the comms. They reach the dropship pilots, Farrow and Spunkmeyer. They watch the telemetry monitors in the ruined APC as the dropship fires its thrusters, lifts off the pad, and begins flying toward their coordinates.
Relief, finally.
For a brief, shining moment, it feels like the nightmare is over. Rescue is literally falling from the sky.
But the universe of aliens punishes complacency. The narrative cuts back to an earlier moment, explaining a fatal breach in protocol. While Spunkmeyer was loading equipment on the landing pad, he left the dropship's rear ramp open.
Oh no.
A single xenomorph, detached from the main hive, silently slipped aboard and hid in the landing gear bay.
As Farrow is piloting the ship through the turbulent clouds, expertly navigating the storm to save her squad, the alien emerges in the cockpit.
It's so fast.
The violence is sudden and absolute. The creature attacks Farrow. Her blood splatters across the canopy. Her hands spasm on the flight yoke. The heavy, fully fueled dropship immediately loses aerodynamic stability.
From the ground, Ripley, Hicks, and the survivors watch the dropship bank wildly out of control. It descends at a terrifying angle, engines screaming, directly toward their position.
They have to run.
They have just enough time to dive into the rocky trenches before the dropship slams into the ground, completely obliterating the APC in a massive fireball.
The crash is spectacular, and its implications are utterly devastating. The explosion scatters debris for miles, it destroys their heavy weapons, their medical supplies, and most importantly, it destroys their only ride off the planet.
It is the ultimate cascade failure. Every complex system they brought with them has been dismantled. The corporate structure tried to monetize the threat and failed.
The military structure tried to overpower it and was decimated.
The technological infrastructure, the guns, the trackers, the vehicles, has literally gone up in flames. They were stranded in the freezing dark of Acheron, a handful of exhausted, traumatized humans with limited ammunition, completely cut off from the universe, with an awakened, infinitely adaptable hive of monsters between them and any hope of survival.
Which sets the stage for the ultimate fight. To pull all these threads together, looking at Foster's novelization, we see a brilliant layering of horror. The text forces us to confront the primal biological terror of a species that views us merely as incubators. But it overlays that with the cold, sterile horror of a corporation that views us merely as expendable line items on a budget. We see the lethal consequences of military hubris when a doctrine of superior firepower clashes with an unyielding, adaptable force of nature.
And amidst all that systemic failure, the core of the narrative is about the resilience of the human spirit. It is about how trauma, rather than destroying a person, can be forged into fierce protective action. Ripley and Newt survive precisely because they understand the reality of the threat, unclouded by corporate greed or military arrogance.
Exactly. Ripley uses the nightmare that haunted her for 57 years as the very armor she needs to protect a child who understands her pain. And this is where I want to turn this over to you, the listener. We've spent this time examining how massive, complex systems fail under pressure. Consider your own environment.
How would you react?
When the structures you trust implicitly, whether it's an employer calculating your worth from a distance or an institutional authority paralyzed by a situation outside their manual, when those systems completely fracture, where do you draw your strength?
Do you freeze like Gorman, unable to process a reality that doesn't fit your expectations? Do you rationalize and calculate like Burke, sacrificing your morality for perceived gain? Or do you find the clarity to take the wheel of a burning vehicle, like Ripley, and forge your own brutal path forward?
It's a heavy question, but I want to leave you with one final profound thought drawn directly from the very end of this story's arc. After all the carnage, after the atmosphere processor goes critical, after facing down the abyss, Ripley and Newt are finally secure in hypersleep pods. Newt looks up at Ripley, a child who has seen the absolute worst the universe has to offer, and she asks a very simple question. Can we dream? And Ripley answers, yes, honey, I think we both can.
It highlights that the final victory isn't just physical survival.
Exactly. When you are surrounded by monsters, whether they are wearing corporate suits or biomechanical armor, maybe the ultimate act of defiance isn't simply living through the nightmare. It is retaining the profound human ability to close your eyes, feel safe, and still dare to dream. How do you protect the sanctity of your own mind when the reality around you becomes a nightmare? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep challenging the narratives around you, and we will see you next time.